Hi, I'm Milena. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to week 2 of 30 books in 30 days. It is Monday and I'm really excited to get started again. This vlog will go from Monday to Sunday, so we have 7 days, and because I am one book behind, I think one, maybe two, oh my gosh, I think I'm one book behind. I would love to catch up. Am I making clever choices to make that happen? Clearly not. Yesterday evening I wrapped up my reading for week 1 and I wanted to read something else. And I have this series that I've been in the middle of for 3 years, haven't continued it. So I thought, no more excuses, Milena, we're going to do this. I had read a few classics, so I was in the mood for some contemporary, and I'm finally going to finish the seasonal Quartet by Alice Smith. So yesterday evening I started spring because I have read autumn and winter. If you've not heard of this before, this is a seasonal quartet by Alice Smith, and Alice Smith is a Scottish literary fiction writer, and she started writing this quartet with the idea of writing something about the UK after Brexit. Brexit is a theme in these novels, but it is very much just about our time and also very much about the characters. I quite enjoyed autumn. I wasn't really sure about winter, so I think I just put it off after that. But yes, I picked up spring and I'm really enjoying it. I am now a little over 80 pages through and both of these are 300 pages, so why would I read that for this challenge? As you can see, like, the font is really big. These are quite fast reads, especially for literary fiction. So here we follow a filmmaker who has lost his business partner called Patty. And Patty, I love her so much because she is like goals to me. She's a very talented writer, which I am not, but like, if only, you know. She has so many books and such amazing knowledge about books. I have just underlined a few things that she says because our main character, I think his name is Richard, yes, he is supposed to make a film, a novel adaptation about a love affair between Catherine Mansfield and Rainer Maria Rilke, which we're pretty sure did not happen, but someone apparently wrote a novel about it. This is all fictional, by the way. And he's going to make a film about it, and he visits Patty before she dies. We get a flashback and they talk about their possible relationship and what she knows about Rilke and what she knows about Catherine Mansfield, both authors whom I have read and whom I have enjoyed. So that just was an instant love for me. One of my favorite things in this book already is on page 39, and Richard says to Patty, "How come you know everything?" And she says, "Don't get at me for knowing. I'm a dying species. I'm that thing nobody out there thinks relevant anymore. Books, knowledge." Honey, you're very relevant and you're not a dying species, because here on BookTube we love that kind of thing. I love that kind of thing. I have this stupid ambitious goal to finish this today and to read a chunk of this tomorrow. So these are the first 2 on the TBR for this week, and then I'm in the middle of another book. Let's see how far I'm in. It's an audiobook. I decided to listen to it because it's this chunker. Oh my gosh, I'm enjoying it so much. And I know the audiobook narrator is great because same narrator as the first book. I'm on chapter 19, which is how these chapters are short, so that's not that far. Let's see. Okay, so I am 166 pages into this beauty, and it has a little over 500 pages. So this is how far I'm in. Of course, I want to finish this week. So this is going to be my audiobook of the week. Another audiobook I would like to listen to this week because I am in a mood for nonfiction, so I won't wait too long with this. And that is Pageboy by Eliot Page, which I've been wanting to read. It's a new release. I don't know really what it is about, but just a memoir of the actor Eliot Page. Really excited for that. Another one that I actually had on the TBR for last week, but I didn't get to, is Cheerful Weather for the Wedding. Short one, can read it in a day. And then a book that I ordered because my dad said this is the perfect book for your challenge for 30 books in 30 days, is the Profundis, I think. I'm going to look up how to pronounce it, by Oscar Wilde, which is a letter he wrote while he was imprisoned. I think this has multiple writings from his prison diaries. I think I'm going to read the Profundis, which again I will look up how to pronounce. A little TBR for this week. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are 5 books, but of course we're supposed to read 7 books this week. And of course I want to read Pageboy, so that is 6. And I guess we'll have a mood read. I don't know which one that's going to be yet. It kind of depends if I'm in a physical reading mood or if I want an audiobook. Maybe I want something Greek myth. That could be fun. Okay, I'm going to look for something short and Greek myth for my 7th read. The vlog's definitely going to start with these 2. I will chapter the vlog because I also ramble about other things than books, as usual. So I'll see you when I've read something. Tuesday. I've had a really busy day today. I did a lot of things in the house. It's not really worth showing yet because I need to do some details. But that means I've been listening to a lot of The Shadow Cabinet by Juno Dawson. I have discovered why my focus is being so shitty. It really bothers me. I hope it's not too bad to look at, but apparently I accidentally moved the button that says autofocus. So I had it on manual focus instead of autofocus. From here forth, I hope it won't be so annoying. I'm really sorry. I've mentioned this book in episode 1 of this vlog series. This is the second book in a low fantasy series that is our contemporary world, but it's with witches. And Her Majesty's Royal Coven, which is what the series is called, is kind of their ministry of witches. We follow a group of women in their 30s and some new characters as well in the second book, and it's just vibes. I love it so much. The characters are amazing. It's so well written. So many great themes are discussed. So I listened to a really big chunk of this and now I'm on page 285, so I'm a little over halfway through. Some things happened, like some revelations, and I was like, big gasp moments. It just, this book just keeps on surprising me. It keeps on being good. Every single chapter is just as good as the first one so far. I'm just baffled by how wonderful it is. I cannot really talk about why I really love certain characters because that's all things from the first book. Things have now happened that were so surprising to me, and I wonder if we're going to get the things I want to happen later in this book, or if I'm going to have to wait till the third book. And because this is a new release, I will have to wait like a year for certain things to be revealed, to be resolved. I love it. I love it. It's a lot of female friendship. It's a lot of there's some family drama, but the core really is the friendships that have existed since childhood and are very complicated now that they're in their 30s. It's so good. It's so good. Oh, I think this will be a 5-star. The book I actually finished is Spring by Alice Smith. I really enjoy like the first 100 pages of this book, but then we switch perspective and we follow a character called Brit or Britannica, I think. It's very telling. Her storyline very much is a Brexit storyline. She works as a guard in a fugitive center. It is described how because of her work, but also because of her circumstances, she really dehumanizes her environment. And that sounds so interesting, like the interesting potential for a character, an interesting environment, possibly interesting plot. I've said it before about this quartet, but I think Alice Smith does a really poor job of writing people in their 20s. I adore her older characters. She writes characters in their 50s, 60s, and even in their 90s. Or I think the man in Austen was over 100 years old. Those are written so well, so beautifully layered. They have a lot of depth. But the younger characters, there's a child in this as well, and I think she was written better. The characters in the 20s, both in winter and in autumn, are written on such a surface level, and they really lack a lot of depth. I think it's such a shame when an older generation views a younger generation that way. It takes away so much from my enjoyment because it's such an interesting device to have someone who has that job and who starts to become something that she doesn't even like. It's such good material, and I find it so strange to write a character so empty and surface level. It makes sense because that is kind of the character she is supposed to be, but that doesn't mean you cannot write her in a clever way. It was such a letdown, but later we got a little bit back to Richard, whom I really enjoyed. Like all the older characters in this quartet, I enjoy a lot. And I did quite enjoy the writing. It is a bit vague at times, but that's okay-ish to me. The general themes I just really enjoy. I think the core of this novel is about what you do with people who come to your country for help and how you treat them. That is a big chunk of this novel, and then you can wonder what Richard kind of has to do with that, with his personal grief and his art. He is connected with the other characters, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't really understand why they're in the same book. I could make something of it, but I don't feel it works the very best. It doesn't work as smoothly as it did, for example, in Autumn. In Autumn, the younger and the older character tied together in a way that made a lot of sense. So I gave this 3.5 stars because I have conflicting feelings about it, but I don't really dislike it in any way. And I did think it was a good book. I always feel conflicted when I have read these books. So tonight I may start Summer. I'm not sure if I'm in a big reading mood, but that one is a little under 400 pages. I want to say that I mind that I'm getting behind, but I don't really mind. I'm just noticing that I really enjoy getting to the books that I have just not had the time for because of my TBR board, and because I'm making so much time for reading now. It's nice to just pick the books that I feel like I finally want to get to, I finally want to make time for, and I don't really care how big they are. So that's the mood I'm in for now, but maybe later in the month I will read some shorter books and we can still do the 30. I am still hopeful. It is Wednesday evening and kids are playing outside very loudly. I do apologize, but I'm going to be hosting some reading sprints in 15 minutes, so I've got to be quick. But I did want to tell you about some current reads because I finished one book. I decided to, surprise, do read shorter things. I decided to pick up 2 novellas. The first one I already finished, and that is another Heartstopper novella by Alice Oseman. This one was a Christmas one, which is very off-brand to read in July, but I don't care, it was a lot of fun. And that is This Winter. This one was so much better than the other novella I read, and the main difference for me was the writing. I thought the writing in this was so much better than in Nick and Charlie. Here we follow the Spring siblings, so we have Tori, the oldest, Charlie, the middle child, and Oliver, their 7-year-old brother. We follow them during Christmas Day and how their family kind of explodes. This is after Heartstopper Volume 4, so Charlie has had a lot of mental health issues. We find him on Christmas Day while he is dealing with those issues, and his family is very, I want to say, one-dimensional about those issues, and it's so painful how that is described, and I could just relate to it in such a painful way, which was very hard hitting. And I also really enjoyed the perspective of his sister in how she viewed him and wanted to help him but also felt helpless, and just the writing was just very good. I think mainly the Charlie part I felt was very good, the Tori part maybe a little bit less, but again, plot characters I always enjoy in this Heartstopper series and in novellas as well. But I gave this a 4-star, and I even considered doing a 4.5. I think if the Tori part had been as good as the Charlie part, I would have given this 4.5 stars. But yeah, I would highly recommend. Only I think if you've finished the graphic novels, the last graphic novel gives a lot of context for this novella. But I had a great time, really enjoyed this one. Then I started reading another novella that I'm not having the best of time with. I'm a little over halfway through, and that is Hex by Jenni Fagan, I think. This has such an interesting premise. We are set in 1591. I believe, if I remember it right. But around that time we are in Edinburgh in Scotland, and we are in a prison where Geillis Duncan is being trialed for witchcraft. And Geillis Duncan, I'll be honest, I only knew her from Outlander, loved her there, but Geillis Duncan also was a historical figure who actually lived much earlier than she lives in Outlander, and she was a young girl who was trialed as a witch. And we have her as a main character, and we have our other main character called Iris, who is a modern day woman from our time. I think she's from 2021. She time travels to this prison to have a conversation with Geillis Duncan before the night that she is supposed to be hanged. Sounds like an amazing premise, but the writing kind of feels like the indulgence of a student film. Which I know it is mean to say, but it just keeps on popping in my head. The writing is like overly poetic while not saying anything. It's a bit painful to read, and I think it is so self-indulgent. I think the author has this fancy of being the main character herself and visiting Geillis Duncan before she was trialed. It's just not very well done. It's not very clear what is happening, and it's just a bit too vague, too dreamlike, too poetic, and I think that doesn't usually work very well in a novella. Right now I'm feeling like this will be a 2-star, but I am gonna finish it during the first sprint because I do want to finish it, but because then it counts for this challenge, but I'm not expecting much from it. It really is a shame because the premise sounds so fun with like the time travel element, but I think this novella could have really benefited from a more straightforward narrative and from a more straightforward writing style. I think then this story could really work. So yeah, I will finish that, and I'm also going to start Summer during the sprints. And then, yeah, I'll get back to you, maybe not tomorrow, but the day after that, once I have finished Summer or the Shadow Cabinet. I don't know which one I will finish first, but the Shadow Cabinet will probably be the favorite of this vlog. Like, I don't know how anything could top that. Alright, it is 10 o'clock now and I just finished the reading sprint. It was really nice. I was joined by Petra and Rosin. They're very lovely people and I had really wonderful chats with them. Just about books, about classics, about Jane Austen. We had a wonderful time. I finished Hex by Jenni Fagan. Ended up giving it 2.5 stars. I have to say I did like the ending better than the beginning. The story just got more plot and more pacing and was a little bit more of what I really wanted from that book. That is why it's a 2.5 and not a 2-star. I guess, but it's the lowest rated book so far in this challenge, which leaves me on book 11, I think. Book number 12 I also started. I have read about the first 50 pages of this book. I was just telling Petra during the sprints, it feels so contemporary that it feels suffocating, because we follow a family who have 3 teenage kids and the parents are divorced. I think. It is still quite vague. And the youngest son is 12 years old and he's called Richard, which, if you remember me talking about Spring like 5 minutes ago, the main character is also Richard. And they're definitely not the same person. The Richard from Spring I love. The Richard in this book is an absolute little annoying shit. He's just being horrible, but in a way that he justifies it by saying, well, if I look at our prime minister, if I look at Trump, they'll say that this is what I'm supposed to think. I've listened to things they said and I'm just repeating them. So he is, I think, embodying a product of right-wing toxic masculinity. It's also infuriating to his family. A lot of tension. Not sure if I'm liking it as much as Spring. Kind of depends what other characters we're getting. Petra said, and I read online, that we will see some characters from Austen again. So I'm assuming that's Elizabeth, I guess, who we're going to meet again. Also, we have an Elizabeth in the first book, and so in Autumn, and we have an Elizabeth mentioned in Spring. And I'm now wondering if it's the same Elizabeth and if that could work. It's so vague and no one on the internet gives me the answers. So I'll have to wait and see. For now, it is time to go to bed. Tomorrow and Friday, I'm not planning on doing a whole lot of reading, but Saturday I'm planning to have a couch potato day and to read as much as I can. So we will definitely spend parts of Saturday together. So I bought a really cool chandelier at the thrift store today because, there's nothing wrong with this light. It's fine, but it doesn't have anything special, and I found one that has lamps that look like flowers and it has leaves. And it was only 10 euros. I kind of fixed it up. I fixed up the wiring a little bit. Do I need to give a disclaimer? Only do these things if you know what you're doing. I'm gonna turn off the electricity and then get this one down and hang the other one up. I will only do it if it's easy, otherwise it's a job for tomorrow. But okay, let's see. Right, removing the old lamp was super easy. Maybe I'll put this one in the attic, because we don't have any pretty lamps there. Isn't she gorgeous? Look at her! Okay, it is hanging. Like, I put the right wires in, but now I have to put it back on to see. Oh, and put the lamps back in. And to see if it works, but oh my gosh, I'm gonna be pissed if it doesn't work because it's so pretty. Look at her. Like, it is an old-fashioned lamp. Which wouldn't work in every room, but because we have like a modern paint and everything, I think it will work. Woo! Oh my gosh, I did it! Whoop whoop! Most beautiful thing I've seen all day. Hi, welcome to Saturday morning. I am on my second cup of coffee because it's that kind of day. Is it still morning though? Yes, it's 11 o'clock on Saturday morning and I just put on some sprints that I missed yesterday to help me motivate to read these two babies. I think I'm going to start Day with Summer by Ellie Smith because I'm 88 pages through, which means I've barely read any of this in the last couple of days. So I would like to start my day and read just a few hours of this. And then yesterday evening I was just not in the mood for literary fiction, so I decided to read De Profundis by Oscar Wilde, which Wait, it is Latin for from the depths, which of course makes sense because he wrote this in prison, and this is basically the anti-love letter to his lover Bosie, whom he had such a turbulent relationship with. He was much younger than Oscar Wilde. You could see it as a revenge letter, but it's a reflection of Oscar Wilde in how the relationship he had with Bosie ruined him in a way, and I think Bosie and his dad kind of caused the trial that made him go to prison, or at least I think it was Bosie's dad who accused him or something like that, and then Bosie convinced him not to leave the country because he didn't have to take it so seriously. But of course he did end up in prison, and I think he has already been in prison for 2 years when he is writing this. I read the first 20 pages of the letter yesterday evening, but this is not any revenge letter. It is over 100 pages long. So yeah, I will be reading that, I think maybe tonight. Today Boy is spending time with friends, so he won't be home until somewhere in the middle of the night. So I have the whole day to myself. I am also doing some laundry because it's very, very necessary. I might make a brownie today because I got some ingredients for that yesterday. And of course I'll make dinner later today. But first I'm just gonna sit down and try to read as much as I can of summer, and while I'm doing some like house chores, if I'm going to make the brownie and do the laundry, I'm going to listen to Pageboy by Eliot Page. So that's a whole lot of goals for one day. I don't think I will finish anything today, but I'll do my very best. I did finish the Shadow Cabinet yesterday, and once I'm a little bit more awake, I will talk to you about that book.
Sway there in all the colors. Some love, lonesome dove, folded on the lawn chair in all the colors. Some love. Stop giving back. Honeysuckle, fresh cut grass. I could really use some stuff like that. Talk to me and tell me all that you've seen, all the colors. Summer love, memories washed in every shade of green in all the colors. Summer love. Day canoe, bathing in the turquoise blue, losing track of time with you. Another peach pie sunset view, sleeping in the afternoon. No place to be and nothing to prove. That's sure something I could use. A cure for the air-conditioned blues. Could use some too.
Can you tell my hair has been in a messy bun all day? And now this has happened, now that I've put it loose. Let's ignore that. It has been a day. I've been feeling pretty sick all day. I don't know if it's like extreme hay fever or a migraine or a chronic fatigue flare-up. It's something like it. I'm not feeling great today. Not a lot of reading has been done. I decided to watch a film, watch on TV, watch on YouTube, and that kind of worked. Then I just put up some audiobooks. I listened to a little bit of the audiobook of Summer by Alice Smith, and I've read up until part 3. And the book has 3 parts, so I'm pretty far in. My goal is to finish this tonight, actually, because I don't really feel like switching books. This is, again, a super Oh, I forgot to put in my microphone. Okay, I'm back with hopefully better sound quality. This, again, is a super conflicting read. Equally conflicting as Spring, because the book feels like a hot mess. It has connections of characters that make so little sense to me. And the same as with Spring. And we did get a repeat character from Autumn, and that was the very old character. The man is now 104 years old in this book, and that I super enjoyed, mostly because we went back to his time during the Second World War, and we met his sister during that time. He is called Daniel Gluck, and his mom is part Jewish, and his family is also German, so the Second World War was of course a really hard time for their family. Go back to that time, we go back to the 40s, and that's super interesting. I especially enjoyed his sister's perspective, but now we are back in 2020. We are back during the pandemic, which it's not very laid on, very thick, and I think the interesting thing is that Alice Smith wrote this during the pandemic, so we are in 2020, so she's not writing in a reflective manner, but in a very in the moment kind of way. And I think it's good that she's writing about 2 teenagers, because we have like the annoying little shit, whose perspective I immensely enjoy because he is incredibly intelligent, and we kind of saw that through his perspective. So he's 13 and his sister is 16, and of course their experience of COVID is something that was not very visible to me, of course, because I don't really have teenagers in my life. The disconnect from school and their friends, of course, must have been gut-wrenching in that time. Imagining how important that was for me. It was my whole life when I was a teen. I have a prediction of how those 2 storylines are going to connect, but it's gonna be in a vague way again, just as with Spring. Like the 2 separate storylines of Spring and the 2 separate storylines of Summer, I feel like they should have been divided differently, because I think that would have made more sense. Because we have, I think, kind of a storyline that is about more society, equality, politics, and we have a storyline that's more intellectual, more artistic. I would have loved to see Spring be the artistic book and Summer be the political book, but I think that's just not the goal of Alice Smith's writing, but I think it would have increased my enjoyment, because right now both of the books kind of feel like a hot mess. But the writing is easy, you know, I'm so conflicted. I think the best description is to say that I don't feel mediocre about these books. I think it will be a 3-star, and usually a 3-star I just don't have very strong feelings on. Like, I'm like, it's fine, but these books I like 50% love and 50% hate. There's no in between with these books. I do want to finish this tonight. I don't think I will read anything by Oscar Wilde. I did start Pageboy and I'm enjoying their narration so far, but I've only listened to 3 chapters, so there's not much I can say from it. I did read some Goodreads reviews that had a lot of comments on the way the book was structured, so I'm kind of preparing for that not being the strongest part of the book and just kind of letting that go and just trying to enjoy the writing, because I think the writing is quite nice. It's not very dry or very matter-of-factly, which sometimes I feel like you have with memoirs that are not written by writers. We are going back and forth between different time periods a lot, but I don't think that's bothering me so far, but I will definitely have to listen to more of it to be able to say something. I think the book that I didn't get to last week, I'm also not getting to this week. It's no reflection on how excited I am for the book. It's just coincidence, I think. So what I want to do for tomorrow as well. This one I want to finish tonight. This one I want to finish tomorrow, and then hopefully also finish Pageboy tomorrow. And then we can wrap up this vlog. It is now 10 o'clock. And I finished Summer, but first we need to talk about the Shadow Cabinet. I finished that one yesterday and I ended up giving it 4 stars. It was a 5-star prediction, but I think the second half lost me at certain points. Compared with the first book, like the villainous presence, or the antagonist, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't really have a villain. I didn't find as strong as it was in the first book, and it didn't feel as original. It was well written nonetheless, but I think there was one character of whom I wanted more, and there was one character I didn't really like them in the first book. Like, they're an interesting person, but I didn't really like their storylines, and I had the same kind of issues with that in this book, and the person was quite present in the second half of the book. It did end in a way that I want to read the next one right away. And I knew that would happen. There was a hint at the end of the book that I kind of saw coming, because there was something in the use of words in the second half of the book that I found really stood out compared to earlier things in the book. And I was like, why is this mentioned in this way? And then in the end it was mentioned again. So I think I kind of know what's going on. I hope it is what I think it is, because that will make for such a cool third book. A solid sequel. Would highly recommend this series in general. It's so fun. It's so fun, and just one of my favorite fantasy series. So really glad I listened to it. Although it does fit a prompt for the Magical Readathon, which starts in August, really well, and that is a very difficult prompt. So I could also have saved it and used it for that prompt, and that is the prompt where you need a shield on the cover. And this book has a shield on the cover. So if you're still looking for something for that prompt, I have a recommendation for you. But I just finished summer, and I don't think I have anything new to say about it. I am going to give it 3 stars. And I do feel like I somehow kind of like it. I still hint from both autumn and spring, and maybe also from winter, but I would have to say that I forgot the most of winter. But I think one character is from that book. I'm not sure. I like the historic parts most. I did like it, but I didn't love it, especially the beginning. I didn't love the way I liked spring, so that is why I'm going to give this a 3 star. Yeah, I still feel super conflicted about it. This is like the kind of book that if you would have a debate and you would be assigned like a positive or negative view, I could argue both views very passionately. Where am I? I don't know. And I kind of like that Ellie Smith has given me this reading experience of feeling so incredibly conflicted. It's very interesting. So I have finally finished the seasonal quartet, and I am proud of myself because I have been delaying this for very long. I am very happy, and I'm thinking there are 2 things I could do. I could read a few more pages of this one, or I could watch Gavin's Charmed vlog, because I started that, but then I was like, okay, let's pause it and let's read. So what should I do? I think I'm going to go over the vlog. It is 10 o'clock, so I will also like just go to bed in a little bit. I will see you tomorrow.
Fresh cut grass, I could really use some stuff like that.
It's Monday. I've given myself an extra day for this vlog because I was just not gonna finish the reads otherwise, and I did want to wrap up my other 2 reads in this vlog. So mere minutes ago I finished De Profundis by Oscar Wilde, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Oh, it's so hard to talk about this book. There's a video on YouTube of a man just standing for 6 hours and reading this letter, and at the end he got very emotional, which I found uncomfortable and intense at the same time. It's beautiful to see someone get so emotional over this, and it makes a lot of sense because Oscar Wilde was literally writing from the depths, and the moments where he was really reflecting on his friendship, or he calls it friendship, but of course it was a romantic relationship with Bosie, is quite heart-wrenching, as were the moments where he talked about the trial. There were also moments that were more intellectual, and I enjoyed those less. While I appreciate Oscar Wilde's intelligence, I didn't really feel the connection with it in this text. Maybe if you would read it and annotate it very actively, then maybe you can see the value and you see how it's all interwoven. But for me, I was really focused on the more present moments while Oscar Wilde was writing this. I'm giving it a 4.5 and not a 5 because there were a few things that I found a little bit annoying. Nowadays, we would say that Oscar Wilde was quite full of himself in his artistic abilities. He calls himself a genius a few times, an artistic genius. Within that, I think he he elevates the tragedy of him being imprisoned versus other people being imprisoned. Of course, Oscar Wilde was a dandy, he was high class, he was a bit pretentious, so it all makes sense, but it annoyed me a little bit while reading. There are a lot of beautiful quotes in this book, but this is something that I just found wise, I think, and it really was a reflection of what he learned from being in prison, because he talks a lot about the concept and the feeling of sorrow and about the hate and love. And he says to Bosie, who has a very difficult relationship with his father, who clearly very much hates his father, "You did not realize that there is no room for both passions in the same soul. They cannot live together in that fair carven house. Love is fed by the imagination, by which we both become wiser than we know, better than we feel, nobler than we are, by which we can see life as a whole, by which, and by which alone, we can understand others in their real as in their idle relations. Only what is fine and finely convinced can feed love, but anything will feed hate." I found that very beautiful. There's also, I think, one thing, and that is that Bosie was in his early 20s, I think Oscar Wilde was in his 40s, and them having a romantic relationship is something you can have an opinion on. Oscar Wilde kind of holds standards for him as if he were also in his 40s, and I think he does not really give Bosie the credit of being so incredibly young. It does not excuse his behavior, but I think I maybe missed a little bit of acknowledgement of his youth. But again, Oscar Wilde was writing this while he was imprisoned for 2 years, and he was not just in prison, he also had a poor diet and he did forced labor. The fact that his mind was still capable of writing something like this is just incredible, and therefore I'm really glad I read it. It has more letters, and I think it has a poem as well at the end, which I have not read yet, but I'm sure I will at some point. The book I listened to most of it today, that is Pageboy by Eliot Page. I gave this one 4 stars, and I think the comments that I saw on Goodreads I do kind of agree with, although it didn't really bother me. I do somehow feel like the book is missing some bits, it's missing some details, it's missing some periods from Eliot's life, and I do still think that there was quite a bit of distance between reader and writer. So even though I really appreciated everything that he wrote, I do think that it wasn't an incredibly personal memoir. When it came to his gender identity and his sexuality, it definitely was. I kind of missed some vulnerability, I think, in relationships with other people. He does describe that with parents and with partners, but I feel like especially in the relationship with his stepbrother and stepsister and his mother, it is touched upon, but I feel like there are so many gaps. And of course, if you write a memoir, it's fully up to you what you want to put in and leave out. But for me as a reader to fully connect with everything that was going on and feeling like I had gained a lot of knowledge on one person, I do feel like they were missing some parts. If a memoir gives me everything I want, I just give it 5 stars. But for this one, I'm going to give it 4 stars. I did truly enjoy it. I would definitely recommend it if it sounds like something that you're interested in. It is day 17 and I've read 15 books, which I'm still as much behind as I was at the beginning of this vlog, but at least I'm not more behind, which is great. I have almost read 4,000 pages, and I looked at my call sheet, which I use to track everything. That is why I know how many pages I've read every time. I'm not calculating that myself. Copal tells me that is more than I read in a regular month. So I'm feeling positive about this challenge. Next week I'm going to read some short reads. We're going to do this. I don't think you can see my, I have the mini classics, so I'm definitely going to just pick up one of those and we're going to have fun. I was getting stressed about this, but I'm feeling good about it again. If you would like to follow me on my journey to read 30 books in 30 days, be sure to subscribe to my channel. But for now, I hope you have a lovely, lovely day or evening, and I hope to see you in another video. Doei! Woo!